Hi everyone, and welcome back to my studio. So today I'm going to paint phlox. It's one of my favorite summer flowers. It's white phlox, and I'll just get started. So what I'm going to do different this time, I have a wooden palette that I'm going to try to use and show how I'm mixing colors. So this way it will be clearer what kind of colors I'm using. So I'm starting from a simple block in, and I'm going to start with my darkest darks. And actually I forgot and started mixing on my glass panel, but I'll change it. So I'm squinting and trying to look at the greens. I'm using oil primed panel, and I'm using bristle brush to start from, so I'm going to do just a quick blocking of the darkest darks first. Try not to knock my phone off because I set up a different way. So I did drawing in advance because I didn't want to trying to see if I get my jar straight or not straight, and what if I get stuck. So I didn't want to spend time on that, so I decided to use that. So my palette, wooden palette, is new and I never used it before, so it might be a little different, and I can see it's very watery. It doesn't absorb as much liquid as my glass one for some reason. It sprays, but anyway. So I'm using my darkest darks, and it's viridian and transparent oxide brown. So I'm painting through the glass here as well, where I see darks. I see some darks here, some of them more green, some of them more brown. I have cool light from the window. These are the back ones. Not as much contrast, but still dark. I'm trying to use a little bit of yellow ochre in there as well. Very strange sound on my panel, my palette. So I'm trying to squint. At this point I'm working on the greens, and I can see that it's very cool. I have cool green. I have a cool light from the window, but I see in this particular area of the jar it's very cool. So I kind of did blocking of greens. I may use a little bit of lighter color at this point, just to do a little bit of lighter greens. I'm not going to the full light at this point. I'm still reserving it. Still reserving my brightest colors. So this is the greens that go on phlox, and the one that in the jar. I think that should be enough. And then I'm adding a little bit of yellow ochre and a little bit of white, just to do the lighter areas. Where I see it. The same here. Now I'm kind of using a little bit of even lighter, more white, cadmium yellow light and viridian just to go lighter here where I see again those lights. That's where my light falls mostly. Of course I'll be correcting as I go. So at this point I'm using lots of Gamsol, or like I use Eco House. It's kind of brush cleaner and paint thinner at the same time. So now I'm going to do a little bit of my other plant that I have because it's darker. So I'm going to start using a kind of purplish blue color here at the back before I go into the phlox, because the phlox is white, so, and it's kind of mixing it with green makes it a little bit more desaturated, because I don't want it very saturated. It's at the back of my still life, so I kind of just, because I'm going to paint around it and it's very thin branches, so I'm just indicating where the main ones are going to be. It's called Russian sage, so I'll have to go with the lighter green as well on it. Just trying to indicate very lightly, so I could paint over it as well later. And now I'm going into phlox, so I'm going to use viridian again and cadmium yellow deep, and just a little bit of touch of brown for my shadow color. So on the first one, yeah, I see it very quite light and warm in the shadow of the phlox, even though I may change it to cooler one a little in some areas, but I'm just painting the first one first. This is my second phlox. Again, I'm using, even though I'm using white, it's a very thin white, so it would be easier to paint over it. And I'm kind of mixing it already with the one that I painted over, because that creates harmony in the painting. So again, because it's very thin, it would be easier to paint over it. So again, I'm dissolving my white with the colors I had, and then I'm looking at another phlox that I have here. So this one is a little bit greener in the shade, in the shadow, and I guess I'll have to modify that once I paint my background, but at this point I'm putting this color in this value. Very, very thinly still. There will be some flowers here, but I may wipe them. So I'm going to show my palette. That's how thin and how. So these are my greens, this is my purple, and this I start adding white to it, working with the bristle brush. So here I have another phlox that already I had to clean it. Actually, it's half dyed and half have buds that didn't come out yet. So, and then I have my lightest part of phlox, which again, it may have some cool green in it and a little bit of yellow and lots of white. So I'm kind of doing this one here. So this is my lightest light really of the whole painting, and I may have reserve a little bit of light still to do more once I do the whole contour and background. At this point I just indicate some lightest areas of my painting, so I would be able to do it later. Again, very thin light, and I'll be working with small brush, but this big brush allows me to actually do it faster and not think too much about details. So now I'm going to do my background. So background is, it's a white material, but it's not purely white. It's kind of strange. Not white, not blue, mix of everything, but I'm going to use my white mixtures that I made, and I will be adding 2 colors to it, mostly, maybe 3. It will be ultramarine blue and raw umber. Raw umber is a cooler brown, I would say. Yeah, so it's not as warm as transparent oxide red. So, and white. So again, going very thinly and using this raw umber blue and white. I'm going to show this mix. Kind of looks like this, very thin, very thin. So where I see blue, I'm going to put more blue, because my color from the window comes as blue. And it's not really blue, it's a more like a kind of complex color. And I'm painting over greens, that's fine, because it's thin. And I can do I can paint over it later. So this is more. Plus, on this kind of surface I can always wipe it. The main thing is just to put the right values correctly while my eye is still quite fresh. So there is more shadow here. And my Russian sage is going to be painted over, but at least I know where it is now. And again, it will be interaction of background and the flowers at the back. So this is a lighter area, but it's a little warmer, so I'm going to add some yellow ochre to that mixture, just to make it a little warmer. And I will wipe with my napkin later for some greens, the most important ones, for some greens and for some. As I use this paper towel, that's where I wipe my brush on. So it's quite good absorbent, and if I want more solution I make it thinner. If I want less I make it thicker. And I kind of will go through silhouette later, but in more detail, but right now this is good enough to give me indication. So now I'm going to do my tabletop. So I'm adding a little bit of, so it's my tabletop is much warmer. As you can see, it's a mix of yellow ochre, transparent red oxide and white. So I'm covering my tabletop, leaving place for my cast shadow. And I'm not sure how light it is on the camera, so I'm going to try to put light. Just worried about reflection, so or glare Hopefully it's not too much glare, because I don't like when it's glare. That's the reason why I moved this my workspace from that glare. So hopefully it's not too bad. So kind of going soft here, adding again some of my background color because it's darker here. It's a kind of dark blue color. And for my cast shadow, I'm going to use some ultramarine and some transparent oxide brown. I think it's more warmer, but it's kind of has this bluish shade in it, so I'll just see if I can do it like this. Yeah, so it goes like this. So again, I'm doing it very thinly, even though I see a light in the middle of it. And then I will finish my jar while I'm there. So this one, reflection of tabletop, but it's darker and warmer, kind of brown, light warm brown color. And again, on the bottle I will be working more, but that kind of gives me initial idea where I am. So, and this is a light that I see that comes from the jar. So I think I'm done with underpainting or blocking stage. I'm taking a softer brush at this point, and I can see it's 17 minutes. I may do it in 2 parts because I don't want to make it too long. So that's a thinner brush. I'm going to put my highlight in the place so I won't forget about it, where it is going to be. So it's going to be somewhere here, and then I see it's here. So of course I'm going to do my shape of the jar correctly later. I'm more interested in flowers at this point because they're going to die first. So I will start from my first flower. So I'm going to the same mixture, but I'm going to add more paint. So I'm going to do viridian and brown, some yellow ochre, and some cad yellow light, and a lot of white. And at this point I need more viridian, so I'll squeeze more viridian. I'm using this big tube of viridian, Gamblin. It was expensive to buy, but it serves right. It was on sale, and because I use a lot of it for my inside flower painting, because it's a warm green, and you can use it in white mixtures, you can use it in shadows, so it's quite good color. So I thought it was a good value for money. So now I'm trying to squint and start from the first flower, so I can see clearly this particular flower is dark, and then next to it, when I say flower, I mean this part of the flower, and then this part of the flower. This phlox comes a little, they're very close in value, and that's why it's nice to see now how much bright actually phlox in comparison to shade, even in shadow. So I'm going to use this to kind of indicate main flowers. I'm going to paint all of them. this is a very nice brush. It's Sable Tech, but it's engineered to replace nice brushes they used to have at the same company that were natural brushes. I think I was already talking about those before. So some parts of phlox stay in the shade, some parts of phlox staying in the light. So I'm trying just to watch carefully which ones are where. Trying to make the shape and contour of that flower. Like I said, because it's very thin, it's very easy to wipe. And if I want to wipe something, I use this thing I have. It's Eco House. So I think this one is a little more shade, more, and some of this already old type of, like, because we have so much heat this summer, it goes very fast. Everything blooms fast and disappears fast. So I can see it's in this area. It's more like brownish type. And also in phlox as a flower, there is some green and in between flowers, some little stalks that you can see. So I'm trying to capture those as well. Not all of them, but some of it, so when you look, you know it's phlox, or at least similar to phlox. And at the same time I can do some leaves. So it's quite yellow, and actually here it's in the dark because everything is in comparison, even though it seems light, really it's not. So now I'm going back to this one. Really I'm working with the same colors, and when the same colors used, it helps to create harmony as well, even though it would think like it's all in the same palette, but it creates kind of rhythm in the painting. So I'm trying to make shapes of the ones that are important, the one that I see, and I will be going back and forth to majority of those flowers. Like, I didn't go into details yet, I'm only adding a thicker paint, but and maybe some details actually I'm doing at the same time, but I will be doing more details later. At this point I just want to kind of indicate majority of the flowers, because I don't know how long these flowers will last. They were pretty worn out even when I got them. Sorry, touched my table. So I'll continue working on phlox white flowers first. Some of them slightly curled and some of them in the buds. The one that in the buds, I'm using the edge of my brush, and the one that almost like curling petals, I'm using again the edge of my brush. I don't want to go too much into the details and too much into the make it very thick paint into the, I forgot the word that I would use for that, like, yeah, thick paint, I would say, because the ones that at the background, they're not very pronounced, so I have to use this soft touches on this brush just to keep it very thin. So there is a little bit of warmth here. So this leaf wasn't there. And I think I may finish actually the first video at blocking stage. It's too yellow. Because I don't want to make it too long. But I want to make sure that I at least do some interesting things here before I cut it off. I have to sit like this because of my camera and phone. So at this point, it's very blue as well. At this point I'm trying to still work only on big shapes. Like the shadow, I'm going to keep it very thin and cool. Not cool, soft. And I can always work on the tabletop background, all that stuff later, because it's not the highest priority when you paint flowers. When you paint flowers, you want to focus on the flowers. So the good thing, my light is very, very constant, because we have a smoky, thick sky, so it's constant cool light, just clouds and smoke. But there is lots of warmth in greens normally. So let me go into some greens with thicker paint right now. There is another flower in the background and I'll get back to it. I just want to make sure that some of these greens are done. This is like the thickest, the darkest part. So the phlox leaves this kind of shape, so I'm not going to throw all of them because I packed them pretty well in this glass jar. So I'm just going to do the mass them in, and then we'll see which ones we have to paint, which ones I like the most and which ones want to be painted. It's very, very dark here. And there is a dark leaf going this way. So probably should let the paint set a little before I paint in that area, because there is plenty of white there. The red leaf gone that way as well. Yeah, once the paint sets a little, I can always paint or on top of it. So in the meantime, there is one bright stalk coming here, so I didn't want to paint this phlox too much, because I have this bright stalk coming. I call it stalk because it's a flower, but it has some unopened, like little buds on it. So and I'm using viridian and cadmium yellow light for the greenest, brightest leaves, and for the white buds I'm just using white with touch of cadmium yellow light and touch of green in them. Actually they're not as bright, whereas they're darker here. So I'm going to use the same mixture of viridian and green. Viridian and transparent oxide brown, sorry. So there's more dark in here. So the main thing is to also go in behind the flowers and see which ones need to be painted and which ones can be left. So in this particular one there are some greens. When I squint I can see lots of greens in there. Then there are greens in the background as well, so now I'm going into those as well slowly. They're not like really bright greens, but at the same time I do shape of this phlox, which I now see changing already. It's very interesting. Actually, this flower here, there is details can be always chosen and painted when there is time for them to paint. Plus, once the paint sets, it's easier. That's why it's good to go from one thing to the other. That's how I like it, because then I can always let the paint set, or when I notice something, like for example here I noticed, oh, I need to correct, definitely I need to correct the shape of this one, so I'll just go around it and correct it. And also I noticed my value should be much darker, so again I'm going into this and correcting it, kind of switching off. Yeah, it's much darker like this. When I squint and I see how much lighter this flower is, I'm comparing background, even though it's also kind of white material, but phlox is so much brighter. So I'm using my green and brown and touch of white and going around it. I think I can go even darker here. Correct the shape as well, so for both flowers. That's why when painting thin is good, you can correct the shape. See how background can change the shape of the flowers. Because I can always go back and do the silhouette of this flower. The main thing for me with this flower is actually to find its contour while my eye is fresh. So there is a kind of greenish white color of these sunflowers in the shadow, so they're really nice. I want to do them as well. And then they're connecting to this shape. And then the purple shape comes back here. Purple and green. I'm trying to keep it nice and warm, even though I have cool light in some areas. I mean, in the light I have cool light, but in the shade it's not warm just because I have cool light, but because in flowers themselves naturally they have lots of warmth even when it's cool light. But of course you have to trust your eye, and I heard that everyone sees differently cool and warm, so maybe I see something cooler. This is my current palette. It looks not very interesting actually, because it has brown, green and white, but these are all really the same colors. I'm going back and forth between viridian brown and yellow, and for the background raw umber blue and white and some yellow ochre, and this was my light one, and I think I now covered it with something. So that's where I stand now, and it's 38 minutes, so I'm going to disconnect and I will take a little break and probably will film the second part, but for now that's part one finished.